Hey, what is up, mortals? It is TC Crew here with an innovative view. Welcome to part 3 of season 1 of What If Deku Had Divine Dividing. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So begin. Time passed within the Kendo Dojo, with Izuku making up for all the lost time he had spent wishing he had a quirk and hoping that things would just work out. To say that Mr. Kendo was a wellspring of information regarding martial arts would have been an understatement. The man lived up to his reputation and had a level of passion for the art of combat in the same vein as Izuku himself when it came to heroes. The man even had notebooks on some of the unique fighting styles of some of the major pro heroes, detailing their strengths and weaknesses. Not just notes, but also drawings of the stances for those heroes' finishing or signature moves. The biggest difference between their notebooks was that Mr. Kendo's writing was like a work of art compared to Izuku's hastily written notes. That passion, as Izuku quickly learned, turned out to be a double-edged sword. As Izuku suspected, a significant number of new students who entered the dojo were brought there by their parents, who wanted him to toughen them up, or just get them away from their computer games. Those students never lasted long. As for the others, some stayed on, but others just got annoyed at the advice Mr. Kendo gave them when he suggested other forms of martial arts that they might be more interested in. An issue that Izuku no longer had. One by one, the father and daughter duo showed Izuku every martial art they knew and let him get a feel of each. The green-haired teen learned about the basics of Kenpo and karate, while also experiencing being thrown with a judo technique. He experienced the rhythm of capoeira before moving on to kung fu, followed by things like gunhead martial arts. In the end, Izuku discovered that the kicks he learned in Muay Thai and Taekwondo felt more natural to him. He could more easily flow into the stances of these moves and use them more effectively than what he had been trying prior. What's more, they just felt right, more so than any of the other times he tried to emulate All Might smashes. The more he learned about these styles, the more he practiced with them. The more influenced he became to make something that was his own, to use what he was learning as the foundation of his own style. But that was not the only thing that he was picking up on. Mr. Kendo and Utsuka were teaching him how to read his opponent, what a shift in their stance meant, how to tell what direction the attack was coming from, and so forth. This was something Izuku was able to pick up on fairly easily thanks to all the time he spent watching various heroes, learning to spot when they would be using their signature moves and other aspects of their quirks. Now these skills have been taken up from 10 to 20. While this was going on, his training with Miss Kendo was slowly producing impressive results. Bit by bit, she moved him up in his parkour routine, pushing him further and further. She showed the green-haired teen along with the rest of the class how to jump from one corner wall to the next in order to scale it, and how to use the same trick when descending. He learned how to shift his momentum around when he fell from a high area, going to a roll so that he would sustain fewer injuries. He began to leap from building to building and in time went from a scrawny kid who could barely run 5 minutes before feeling like he was about to die to a well-toned, well-muscled athlete who stayed with the class even when everyone else dropped out. As for the school, things had certainly changed since the day Izuku awakened Divine Dividing. The story of how Izuku, of all people, had managed to overpower Bakugo and knock him into the desks had passed around the school so many times that it might as well have become a local legend. What's more, many of his classmates began to take notice of Izuku, his ever-improving build. It was during gym class where they were playing a game of basketball with shirts versus skins, Izuku being skins, that all his hard work with Miss Kendo had been put on display for everyone to see, which made many of his classmates compliment him. He even noticed that some of the girls, the same ones who had snickered at him and left him to the mercy of Bakugo prior, were now blushing at him. Meanwhile, with Bakugo, as days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, the teen became more and more irritated. Whenever even the slightest bit of praise was given to Izuku in his presence, the explosive blonde would shoot out death glares at the one who spoke before turning his anger on the holder of the divine dividing. As soon as Izuku began to perform better in PE or show a marked improvement in his grades, Bakugo's fists would soon slam into a desk or a locker while letting out a shout of rage. As for Midoriya's quirk, Izuku repeated the same story he was telling everyone in order to avoid confusion. Nearly all of his classmates, when they heard this, just nodded while looking thoughtfully and saying that it made sense to them. Bakugo, on the other hand, "You had to be kidding me! That damn nerd knew about his quirk this entire time! That Deku, who was mocking me, looking down on me!" Eventually, it reached a point where Bakugo blew up his own desk in a fit of rage before letting out a savage scream that promised bloody murder while eyeing his former childhood friend. It probably would have escalated further into a full-blown fight had not their homeroom teacher, as well as several others who heard the noise, rush in at that moment. Needless to say, the teen was punished, but only with a stern warning from the principal, as he did not wish to ruin the future of such a promising student over one incident of misconduct. This was only enough to keep Bakugo somewhat at bay, gripping his pencil so tightly that he had to buy them in large packets daily, or clawing at his new desk in order to keep himself from doing anything explosive in class. But in those times outside of class, Bakugo would vent by putting the green-haired teen down with his words. "It doesn't matter what shitty quirk you have now. You'll never be able to reach my level, no matter how hard you try. And you'll still never get into UA, so quit looking down on me." And so, eventually the day of the entrance exam loomed over, so close on the horizon. "Begin!" As soon as the signal was given by Mr. Kendo, both Izuku and Otsuka, both of whom were in their fighting stances, closed the distance between each other within the dojo. Sweat rolled down their faces from several prolonged matches the pair had gone through already, caressing the slight bruises they both carried as they did. Despite this, both teams just grinned in anticipation as their last bout of the night began. Izuku, having analyzed her fighting style for some time now, knew that she was more than likely going to start off with a powerful right hook aimed for his chest, before going in with a flurry of punches, and after staring into her eyes, knew that this time would be no different. Rather than blocking it, Izuku leaned back to allow the first blow to sail over him, while at the same time kicking upwards. As he expected, Itsuka moved back to avoid the blow, which nearly grazed her chin. However, Izuku wasn't done. Landing on the ground with his hands hitting the mat first, he used a rebound in order to launch himself forward with his leg extended ready to connect with the orange-haired girl's gut. Unfortunately for Izuku, Itsuka saw this coming and was able to move back just in time to avoid an attack that would have knocked the air right out of her. Once Izuku realized that his attack wouldn't connect, he managed to spin his body around rapidly before landing on his feet. But he didn't come to a complete stop, still using the momentum he had generated to move into a spin kick while moving forward. Itsuka blocked the attack with her arms, grunting from the impact, yet smiling all the same. This, after months of hard work, was the final evolution of all of Izuku's training, the shooting dragon style. This style, named in honor of Albion, used extensive legwork and training had gained in Muay Thai, Taekwondo, parkour, and various other martial arts he had learned and brought together with the help of Mr. Kendo in order to deliver powerful kicks on his own, as well as using his surroundings in various ways. As for his hands and arms, for right now they were going to be used to block or deflect enemy attacks when he couldn't dodge. Though he hoped that when he would be able to practice more with Divine Dividing, he would also include using his dividing abilities. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it was something Izuku was taking pride in. For the next several minutes, the match continued as Itsuka sent punch after punch towards her forest green trained partner, while Izuku did his best to dodge them and counter with his own kicks. Sweat continued to roll down their bodies, sprinkling onto the mat, yet neither team made it any mind as they pushed their bodies further. In the end, it was thanks to the years of experience she had over Izuku that Itsuka managed to deliver a blow powerful enough to knock him down. That's match. Good job, both of you. As Mr. Kendo let out a laugh, Itsuka walked over to Izuku and extended her hand to him as she panted heavily with a big grin on her face. For a moment, Izuku just looked at the friendly gesture. When he had first started taking these lessons, the gesture was practically foreign, causing him to flinch. But now, after 10 months, such gestures were common, as Izuku finally had a friend after so many years. Itsuka was pretty easygoing, willing to talk to Izuku on just about anything when they were having their breaks or when they happened to meet up in public. She was just herself, and Izuku felt like he could just let down his guard whenever she was around. The two had even started hanging out on days when they weren't training, just to have some fun together. How that happened, Izuku hadn't the foggiest. One moment they were talking over the phone, and the next moment he was in Itsuka's room, which surprisingly had a bit of a motorcycle theme to it, where the girl posed to help Izuku practice his drawing of her for when he included the young Kendo into his hero notebooks. He was honestly surprised he hadn't passed out in shock as he sat there, sitting on a girl's bed. After that, it just became a regular thing for them to simply hang out. Soon enough, Izuku took the offered hand, though he did blush as he was helped to his feet, noticing that Izuku's gi had opened slightly to show off a bit more of her skin. Nothing too perverted, coming a little close. So the teen did the only thing he could think of and averted his eyes. Good job, Midoriya! I can't believe you're the same scrawny kid that came here almost a year ago. Are you sure your quirk isn't some super specific learning quirk? Like you can learn and master martial arts faster? Izuku let out a laugh, feeling a little bit embarrassed as he kept his gaze slightly downward. Thanks, but I don't think so. Besides, even if I did, it would be no match for all the hard work you've put into your training. Izuku managed to look his sparring partner in the eye to see her beaming at him with pride, her smile nearly blinding him. Just in time as Mr. Kendo approached the pair to further congratulate the pair. That, as well as instructing them to rest their bodies for the next couple of days so that they would be in a tip-top shape for the UA entrance exam. After all, it was only a few days away. This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN allows you to change your IP address, making it harder to track and securing your privacy. In addition to providing safe passage through the web, you can also expand the reach of your favorite streaming services like Disney+. If you are from the United States, you won't be able to watch any of the MCU and Sony Spider-Man movies, but by switching your location to Japan, you can access them whenever you want. Check out the link in the description to get 3 extra months when you purchase the 12-month subscription plan that costs $99.99 a year. This deal is for a limited time. And thanks to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. On the day of the entrance exam, Izuku was making his way towards the entrance of the famous hero school. The teen's body trembled with each step he took as his nervousness began to get the better of him. Oh man, did I study enough for the written exam? Did I study the right things? I know I did really well in the mock exams, but is that enough to pass? What about the practical exam? I know I'm just going to mess everything up.
Relax, partner.
Easy for you to say. You're not the one taking the exam. If I fail, then all of my hard work will be for nothing. I'll let Mr. Kendo down. I'll let Itsuka down. They'll think that everything they've helped me with has been a waste of time.
They really believe that.
Izuku's thoughts trailed off as he stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, looking down at the ground as people began to pass him by. He tried to imagine their faces, looking down upon him with the same level of disgust and anger that Bakugo would shoot at him. Only it looked so alien to him, so unnatural.
I understand what you're going through. You are not the first human I've been sealed within to let your fears and nerves get to you. Now, take a breath and relax.
At first, Izuku wanted to argue with the ancient dragon, but decided to trust him on this. Slowly, Izuku took a breath before exhaling with equal slowness. As he did so, he could feel the trembling lessen as Albion continued to speak.
Good, good. Now that you are relaxed, then perhaps you will listen to reason. Failure is not even a possibility. Not when you have the power of divine dividing within you. Whatever challenges these fools place in front of you, they shall be overcome by using their own power against them. And what is it your teacher taught you? You have everything you need to succeed. You just need to figure it out.
Slowly, Izuku smiled as he remembered the words that Mr. Kendo had told him. Albion was right. He had all the tools he needed. All that was left was to see the problem before him and figure it out. Except,
okay, that'll help me with the practical. But what about the written portion? I'm still a little nervous about that.
Albion snorted.
You have studied for the exams more than most of my previous partners have studied in their entire lives. I highly doubt that there will be anything on it that you wouldn't know. And should that happen, you need only ask me for assistance.
Izuku jumped at that, scaring the people around him with the sudden act. Unable to help himself, the green-haired teen began looking around as if fearful that someone heard that.
Wouldn't that be cheating?
Aha! I am a part of you. Our very souls are connected. It would be more akin to say you were conversing with yourself. Besides, how would they know?
That, might be true, but it still feels wrong somehow.
Bah, fine. Have it your way.
Lightly chuckling at Albion's antics, Izuku decided that he had wasted enough time just standing around and continued along his way. Yet he did not get far as he heard a girl's voice speaking in broken Japanese, sometimes slipping English words into her sentences. Curious, Izuku began to scan the crowd before noticing a girl with large horns sticking out of her long, blonde hair. Her blue eyes glistened, her voice in a panic as she moved from person to person and shoved a piece of paper in front of them, to which she then pointed to something on it. Most of the people there, all of whom looked like students from various schools, either ignored her completely or just laughed as they kept on walking. He then watched as she approached another student, a tall boy with dark blue hair and glasses, who seemed to just glare at her with annoyance. She once again spoke, but as soon as she held up the paper, the blue-haired teen began making a chopping motion with his arm as he spoke loudly. Unacceptable! If you cannot take this seriously, then I suggest you just go home! With that, the boy turned on his heel and stormed off, leaving the girl to tremble in a way similar to how Izuku had been not too long ago. Seeing someone in distress, Izuku did the only thing he could think of. He reached out to her.
Excuse me? Can I help you?
Izuku's words, spoken in slightly strained English, caused the girl's ears to perk as she turned her attention onto the divine divider. He could see hope in her eyes as she quickly approached him.
You speak English?
Izuku nodded.
Enough to hold a decent conversation. My dad works in the States, so I thought it would be a good idea to learn a second language in middle school. Oh, thank God!
As the girl said this, she jumped into the air happily before showing Izuku the paper in her hand. Looking down, the first thing that caught Izuku's attention was the UA logo in bright blue at the top. As he began to skim the document, quickly translating as much of the English into Japanese as he could, it dawned on him that he had received the exact same letter. The letter informing him about when and where the entrance exam was going to be.
I'm really sorry. I was a little nervous this morning about taking the exam, so I decided to stop at one of your manga cafes. I always wanted to visit one, and I thought it would be a good way to calm my nerves. You know, relaxing with a good manga to take my mind off things. Then I guess I sort of lost track of time.
As she said the last part, the blonde looked away guiltily, making Izuku wonder just how long she stayed there.
Anyways, I trying to find the school, but my Japanese isn't that good yet, No one seems to be very helpful. Guess they all must be busy too. I would have used my phone to get directions, but I left it at my hotel. The last thing I wanted was it going off in the middle of the exam or getting damaged during the practical.
Izuku bit his lower lip before glancing around, again noticing the students wearing uniforms from various schools. He had a feeling he knew where they were all heading, to UA entrance exam. For a moment, the teen wondered why no one was willing to help. After all, they were all trying to become heroes, so why not do something heroic, even if it was nothing more than a small act of kindness, and help her? The answer he got, however, made him sick to his stomach.
They're not helping her because they don't want her to show up. There are only 36 spots available for the first year hero course, and everyone is fighting for them. If she doesn't show, then that will be one less person they have to compete against. And if she's late, the result will be the same, since the school will turn her away if she's even a second late. But this isn't right. This isn't how heroes are supposed to act.
As a righteous fury began to bubble within Izuku's body, Albion spoke up.
This is nothing new. Humans will naturally often prioritize their own desires and happiness over the fact of others. It is understandable.
That doesn't make what they're doing right or heroic.
I never said it was either of those. Just that it was understandable.
Sighing, Izuku looked back at the girl who stood there looking at him with those big blue eyes of hers. As he looked at her, Izuku's thoughts became more focused. He knew he couldn't control what others thought or did, but he had full control over his own actions, and he was going to do what a hero should always strive to do: help someone else, even at the cost of oneself. Even if helping her meant that there would be more competition for him later, something that might even end up costing him entrance into the school of his dreams, it would be worth the risk just to help her. So Izuku smiled at her warmly.
Well, I can show you the way if you want.
The blue eyes brightened considerably, the girl's smile growing larger.
Really? You don't mind? I'm not going to make you late for anything, am I? To be honest, I'm actually heading there myself, so it's no problem. Oh, right. I have to introduce myself. My name is Izuku Midoriya. And I'm Pony to Notori, and thank you so much. I hope we both get in. It would be great to have a classmate that can speak English and is so nice.
Izuku grinned, voicing his agreement as the two headed off towards the famous school. What neither of them knew was that the whole thing had been caught on a hidden camera, one of the hundreds placed around the area surrounding UA. It would also come as no surprise that they also didn't know that a certain principal had watched and listened to the entire exchange, smiling onto a teacup as he wrote down a series of notes. Eventually, Izuku and Pony made it onto the ground of UA, where Atsuka was waiting for them. After a brief explanation of why he had been a little late and introducing Pony, the three went into the building to take the written portion of the test. Needless to say, the written exam's difficulty lived up to the school's reputation. It seemed like none of the questions were straightforward, as nearly every single one of them was written in a way that was meant to trip or misdirect the student into answering it incorrectly. Even Albion, who looked down at the test through Izuku's eyes, found himself struggling to answer the questions. Thankfully, Izuku did not rush himself, reading and then rereading the questions as many times as he felt necessary before fully understanding what they were asking and then writing in his answer. As he worked, his attention was drawn away from his paper several times thanks to a few people who were overconfident in their cunning, as they believed that they were smart enough to cheat and get away with it. Such thoughts were swiftly proven false, as the teachers who patrolled the auditorium would silently rush over to those less than honorable students to catch them in the act and instantly remove them from the premises. A more disheartening sight were those who sat there looking down at their test papers in abject horror before just getting up on their own and leaving. When the exam was over, Izuku spotted Itsuka, who gave him a grin along with a big thumbs up, which he returned. He then looked around to see that Pony also seems to be in high spirits. After a little bit of a wait, President Mike entered the scene to explain to them the practical portion of the exam. According to the DJ Hero, they would be fighting a large number of robotic villains within Mach cities. There were 3 different types of villains, each one with a numerical value based on their level of difficulty, with 1 being the weakest while 3 being the strongest. Basically, you get points equal to the villains you defeated. It seemed simple enough, but Izuku did have a nagging feeling in the back of his head that they weren't telling them everything. Then, as the blue-haired student began asking about the 4th robot on the sheet they were all given, Izuku decided to get Albion's opinion while doing his best to pay attention to what was being said in the real world.
What do you think, Albion?
I believe that your suspicions have merit. Given how the written test was presented, it would be foolish not to expect some sort of surprise. For example, if there was a way to gain points, then perhaps there is also a method by which points are lost.
Izuku nodded, barely even noticing that the blue-haired teen had chastised him in front of everyone as it looked to all the world that he was lost in his own little world, while mumbling to himself.
Sorry, I'm just thinking.
That seemed to barely pacify the other teen, whose attention returned to Present Mike as soon as he began to talk once more. And as he did, Izuku went back to his conversation with Albion.
Right, we should keep our eyes open. However, I'm a little worried that we're facing robots. I've never taken the energy from something that wasn't alive before. Is it possible for Divine Dividing to work on a robot?
In the past, Divine Dividing has been able to absorb the energy from angels, devils, fallen angels, dragons, magical attacks, and so forth. I see no reason why you shouldn't be able to do the same thing with robots. However,
Albion's words trailed off as the students around them began to rise from their seats, heading towards their assigned battle zones. Patiently, the dragon waited, hoping that Izuku could figure out what he was about to say. Thankfully, he didn't need to wait long.
The drain might not affect them the same way. I mean, can a machine's strength be cut in half? Its speed? I've seen machines slow down when their power is really low. But this, I might need to use Divine a couple of times to get them to that point. Can my body handle it? Oh no. I knew I should have tested Divine Dividing more.
Izuku was now moving towards the locker rooms, a hand on his chin as he continued to be deep in thought.
Okay, Izuku. Panicking like this won't get you anywhere. Just need to focus. I'm a lot stronger than I was back when I first used Divine Dividing, so I should be able to handle the transfer better. If I continue to use that same energy to its max potential, then maybe I can burn through it quick enough to use Divine on the same robot a couple of times, maybe 3. That will be 30 seconds, so I should be able to dodge their attacks. Perhaps I could try looking for any structural weak points while I'm dodging.
And so, Izuku's mind continued to try and work out the problem as he headed towards the test that would determine his fate. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in all of this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of our YouTube members. Thirdly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has you covered. Our We the Celestials, My Hero Academia, and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a twist. Check out if you're interested. Fourthly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in today's excellent content production. Their details can be found in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend out an invitation to join the team. The only caveat is that we only accept members from 16 years old to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it for today's video. So, thank you all for watching and have a great day.